Most people live their lives on autopilot, controlled by what others think, by fear, or by circumstance. But what if you could break free? Imagine waking up every day unshakable, calm under pressure, and untouchable by anyone's influence. In the next few minutes, you'll discover the 6 habits that make a person impossible to control, habits that build mental strength, self-mastery, and true freedom. This isn't about power over others, it's about power over yourself. Stay with me and learn how to become unstoppable. There is a quiet power in people who cannot be controlled. Not loud, not aggressive, not rebellious, but calm, grounded, unmovable. These are not people who dominate others, they are people who have mastered themselves. Stoicism teaches that true freedom is internal. When the mind is disciplined, no external force can enslave it. Here are 6 habits of people who cannot be controlled. First, they control their reactions. They understand this truth: events themselves are neutral. It is the reaction that gives them power. Insults, delays, disrespect, loss, none of these dictate behavior. When emotions are ruled by reason, manipulation fails. Second, they do not seek validation. Approval is a weak chain. Those who crave praise become obedient to opinions. But the uncontrollable person measures worth internally. Silence does not disturb them. Criticism does not define them. When validation is unnecessary, control disappears. Third, they accept reality without complaint. They do not waste energy wishing life were different. They face what is, not what should be. This acceptance is not surrender, it is clarity. Once reality is accepted, action becomes precise and unstoppable. Fourth, they choose discipline over comfort. Comfort creates dependence. Discipline creates freedom. They wake up when they should. They work when it is hard. They train the mind and body daily. A disciplined person cannot be easily led, distracted, or broken. Fifth, they detach from outcomes. They give full effort but release the result. Success does not inflate them. Failure does not destroy them, because control over outcomes is an illusion, but control over effort is absolute. Sixth, they know who they are. Identity is armor. When values are clear, manipulation has no entry point. They do not bend for trends, pressure, or fear. They move with purpose, not impulse. Stoicism is not about becoming cold, it is about becoming unshakable. When reactions are mastered, when validation is irrelevant, when discipline replaces comfort and purpose replaces fear, control from the outside becomes impossible. The most dangerous person is not the loudest. It is the one who governs the mind, because a person who controls the self can never be controlled by the world. A person who cannot be controlled has learned one essential skill: mastery over reaction. This is not about suppressing emotion or pretending not to feel. Stoicism never teaches emotional numbness, it teaches awareness. Between what happens and how one responds, there is always a space. In that space lies freedom. Most people surrender this space without realizing it. A harsh word, a delay, a mistake, or an unexpected loss immediately triggers anger, fear, or frustration. The moment the reaction takes over, control is lost. Whoever provoked the reaction now holds power. The Stoic mind pauses. It observes the emotion without becoming it. Anger may rise, but it is not obeyed. Fear may appear, but it is questioned. This pause is not weakness, it is discipline. When reactions are delayed, clarity enters. The mind begins to ask, is this within my control? Does this deserve my energy? What response aligns with my values? By asking these questions, the person reclaims authority over the moment. External events are neutral. They do not carry meaning on their own. Meaning is assigned by interpretation. An insult is only painful if it is accepted as truth. Disrespect only wounds if ego demands validation. Stoicism reminds us that no one can damage character without permission. A reaction is permission. When permission is withheld, manipulation fails. The calm individual becomes unpredictable in the best way, unreadable, grounded, and difficult to provoke. Mastery of reaction also prevents emotional exhaustion. Many people live in a constant state of inner conflict because they react to everything. News, opinions, behavior of others, and imagined futures all compete for attention. Each reaction drains energy. Over time, this leads to resentment, anxiety, and bitterness. The Stoic approach is selective engagement. Not everything deserves a response. Silence is often stronger than explanation. Stillness is often more powerful than retaliation. This discipline is built through practice, not theory. It begins with noticing triggers. What situations consistently disturb inner peace? Is it criticism, rejection, disrespect, or loss of control? Once triggers are identified, they become training grounds. Every moment of irritation becomes an opportunity to strengthen self-command. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" the Stoic asks, "How will I respond to this?" Controlling reactions does not mean becoming passive. It means responding intentionally rather than impulsively. Action guided by reason is far more effective than action driven by emotion. Calm decisions carry precision. Emotional decisions often carry regret. The person who controls reactions chooses the right moment, the right words, or sometimes no words at all. Over time, this habit reshapes identity. Confidence grows quietly because it is no longer dependent on external conditions. Self-respect deepens because behavior aligns with principles, not moods. Others may attempt to provoke, pressure, or manipulate, but their efforts dissolve against composure. When there is no emotional handle to grab, control cannot be taken. In Stoicism, freedom is not found in changing the world. It is found in governing the inner state. A person who rules reactions rules the self, and a person who rules the self stands beyond control. A person who cannot be controlled has learned to live without seeking validation from others. This is not arrogance, nor is it indifference to the world. It is a deep understanding that true freedom and inner peace do not depend on the opinions of others. Most people are constantly tethered to the judgments, approval, or recognition of those around them. Every word of praise feels like fuel, and every critique feels like a weight. In such a life, control is surrendered. Actions, decisions, and even emotions become dictated by external approval. The moment someone else's opinion becomes more important than one's own principles, freedom is lost. The person who cannot be controlled, however, breaks this invisible chain. Recognition is not necessary for confidence. Criticism does not trigger fear. Compliments do not inflate ego. Their sense of self-worth is internal, built upon personal standards and values. The mind is anchored in clarity, not swayed by fleeting applause or condemnation. In this way, they remain unshakable, calm, and independent, no matter the chaos surrounding them. Others may attempt to influence, manipulate, or coerce, but when validation is irrelevant, those attempts fall flat. Detachment from validation is not about ignoring the world. It is about discerning what truly matters. A person can care deeply about work, relationships, and responsibility, yet remain untethered from external approval. They measure their actions against their own principles and intentions, not the applause of the crowd. Every action is deliberate, driven by purpose, not by the hope of praise. When one acts for personal virtue rather than for recognition, decisions are clearer, mistakes are less burdensome, and the mind becomes harder to manipulate. This habit also strengthens emotional resilience. When the mind is not dependent on approval, it cannot be easily wounded. Criticism no longer feels like a personal attack, but as a reflection of someone else's perspective, limited by their own understanding and biases. Praise no longer becomes a fleeting high, but simply acknowledgement, unnecessary for fulfillment. This balance cultivates peace and stability. The mind, free from constant judgment, becomes a fortress, impervious to manipulation and unshakable in adversity. Building this independence requires awareness and practice. The first step is observing the moments when approval is sought. What situations trigger the need for recognition? Is it social media likes, workplace praise, or the fear of judgment? Once these triggers are understood, they become opportunities for growth. In each moment, the individual practices choice-choosing principle over applause, integrity over popularity. Over time, the habit of self-validation strengthens and reliance on others diminishes naturally. The power of this habit extends to relationships and communication. People who do not seek validation do not argue for the sake of proving themselves. They listen, respond, and act from a place of reason rather than fear of judgment. Conflicts become manageable, manipulation becomes ineffective, and influence becomes balanced. By valuing their own perspective without requiring external reinforcement, they maintain autonomy in every interaction. Ultimately, freedom from the need for validation is freedom from control. It is a recognition that influence can only reach those who accept it. By measuring worth internally and acting according to personal principles, a person becomes untouchable in their inner life. External pressures may exist, but they cannot dominate, dictate, or sway the individual. In this way, self-mastery grows quietly but powerfully, creating a life guided by purpose, calm, and independence. A life no one can control. A person who cannot be controlled has mastered the art of accepting reality as it is. This does not mean passive resignation or weakness. It is not about giving up on goals, ambitions, or desires. Stoicism teaches that the world is neither fair nor unfair. It simply exists. Events unfold according to causes and conditions beyond one's control. People act according to their nature, and circumstances arise according to patterns that are often invisible. The uncontrollable person recognizes this fundamental truth and aligns themselves with it rather than fighting against it. Resistance to reality breeds frustration, disappointment, and suffering. Acceptance, on the other hand, brings clarity, freedom, and power. Acceptance begins with seeing the world clearly. It requires a mind that observes without distortion, without insisting that life conform to personal expectations. When expectations are rigid, reality becomes the enemy. A delay in a project, a betrayal in a relationship, or a sudden loss is met with anger and despair. Such reactions are signs that the mind is attempting to impose control where none exists. But the person who accepts reality understands that resistance is wasted energy. Instead of reacting with frustration, they ask a different question. What can I do within my power in this situation? This shift in perspective transforms obstacles into opportunities for action, learning, and growth. Living in acceptance does not mean ignoring problems or avoiding responsibility. On the contrary, it allows for precise and effective action. When one stops wasting energy wishing things were different, attention is freed to focus on what can be changed. Problems are assessed clearly, solutions are crafted without distraction, and energy is directed where it matters most. The uncontrollable person sees reality as it is, responds with reason, and acts with integrity. In this way, acceptance becomes a tool of empowerment rather than passivity. Moreover, acceptance protects the mind from manipulation and emotional disturbance. Many people can be controlled simply because they refuse to accept how the world works. They expect fairness, kindness, or loyalty as guarantees and are easily shaken when these expectations fail. Those who accept reality, however, are grounded. They expect nothing beyond what is reasonable and therefore are seldom disappointed. Their peace is not fragile. It is rooted in understanding. Others may try to provoke, deceive, or control them, but such attempts are powerless against a mind that sees the truth clearly. The habit of acceptance also strengthens resilience. Life is unpredictable and often harsh. Illness, loss, failure, and rejection are inevitable. Those who cling to how they think life should be experience suffering with each setback. Those who accept reality, however, endure hardship with composure. They understand that setbacks are not personal attacks, but part of the natural course of existence. Each challenge becomes an opportunity to practice patience, wisdom, and courage. Acceptance transforms adversity from a source of despair into a teacher, a forge in which character is strengthened. Acceptance also promotes clarity in decision-making. When the mind is not clouded by wishful thinking, denial, or resentment, it sees options more clearly. Choices are guided by facts rather than fantasies, by reason rather than emotion. This leads to more effective action, fewer mistakes, and greater inner confidence. The uncontrollable person does not wait for the world to bend to their will. They move skillfully within it, adapting with intelligence and integrity. Ultimately, acceptance of reality is not a surrender to fate. It is a surrender to understanding. It is the acknowledgement that some things lie beyond influence, and that true power lies in controlling the self. By seeing reality clearly and responding with calm, deliberate action, a person becomes unshakable, unmanipulable, and free. Acceptance is not weakness. It is the foundation of independence, resilience, and mastery. In a world full of chaos, those who accept reality stand steady, a living example of freedom that cannot be controlled. A person who cannot be controlled understands the value of discipline over comfort. This is a principle that runs deeper than mere routine or habit. It is a philosophy of life, a commitment to personal sovereignty, and a recognition that comfort often comes at the expense of freedom. Most people live in a constant state of seeking ease. They avoid challenges, postpone effort, and sacrifice growth for temporary pleasure. This pursuit of comfort creates dependence, weakness, and vulnerability to influence. When the mind and body are habituated to ease, external pressures can bend them easily. The person who cannot be controlled, however, chooses discipline as a path to independence and strength. Discipline is not punishment, it is empowerment. It begins with small, consistent choices, waking up early when the body craves sleep, focusing on tasks when distraction is tempting, training the body when fatigue beckons. These small victories accumulate, creating a fortress of self-mastery. Each act of discipline strengthens the mind's ability to resist manipulation, control impulses, and act in alignment with values. Over time, the individual becomes resilient, deliberate, and focused, no longer easily swayed by convenience, desire, or external pressure. The disciplined person does not avoid comfort for the sake of suffering. They embrace it as a tool for growth. Every challenge, every moment of discomfort is an opportunity to strengthen character. Physical training, mental focus, and emotional restraint are not burdens, they are investments in freedom. Each sacrifice of comfort is a step toward self-control, a layer of armor against the attempts of others to manipulate or dominate. Those who seek only comfort live as captives to circumstance. Those who choose discipline live as masters of themselves. Discipline also shapes decision-making and priorities. When the mind is trained to act according to reason rather than impulse, clarity emerges. The disciplined person is not swayed by fleeting desires, emotional reactions, or the approval of others. They choose what is necessary, what aligns with principles, and what advances purpose. Comfort may tempt procrastination, indulgence, or avoidance, but discipline insists on action, effort, and responsibility. This habit creates a life guided by intention rather than chance. Furthermore, discipline cultivates patience and long-term vision. Comfort encourages immediate gratification, but the disciplined mind recognizes the value of delayed rewards. Wealth, wisdom, strength, and respect are not achieved through fleeting pleasure, they are built through consistent, deliberate effort. The person who prioritizes discipline over comfort learns to endure hardship, overcome obstacles, and remain committed to long-term goals. This ability to sustain effort, regardless of ease or hardship, makes them impervious to control, for their focus is internal and their purpose clear. Discipline also fortifies emotional resilience. The world is unpredictable, often harsh, and full of distractions. Those accustomed to comfort crumble when pressure arrives. The disciplined person, however, has trained their mind to endure, to persevere, and to act despite challenges. When others attempt to provoke, influence, or coerce, their efforts encounter a steadfast mind, one that is not dependent on circumstance, approval, or ease. Discipline creates a foundation of stability, making external control nearly impossible. Ultimately, choosing discipline over comfort is an expression of freedom. It is the conscious decision to govern oneself rather than be governed by impulses, desires, or external influence. It is the recognition that true power lies not in avoiding hardship, but in mastering it. Through consistent practice, patience, and commitment, the disciplined person becomes self-reliant, resilient, and unshakable in a world designed to tempt, distract, and weaken. Discipline is the anchor that keeps the mind free. Those who live by it cannot be controlled, for their strength is rooted in self-mastery, not circumstance, and their actions are guided by reason, not fleeting desire. A person who cannot be controlled has learned the art of releasing attachment to outcomes. This is a principle that lies at the heart of Stoic philosophy, a truth that separates those who live freely from those who live in constant struggle with circumstance. Most people are enslaved by results. Success, failure, recognition, or defeat dictate their mood, their confidence, and their actions. They act not according to reason, but according to the expectations of what might happen. When outcomes align with desire, they feel elated. When they do not, they feel crushed. In this cycle, control is given away. A single setback, a delay, or a misfortune can unravel peace of mind. The person who cannot be controlled, however, shifts focus from what is uncertain to what is within their command. Effort is the domain of the self, and the only true measure of action. Results, by contrast, are often influenced by countless variables beyond one's control: the behavior of others, unforeseen circumstances, timing, or chance. To cling to outcomes is to anchor happiness, pride, and security to forces that are inherently unpredictable. The uncontrollable person understands this deeply. They dedicate themselves fully to action, to preparation, and to integrity, but they do so without expectation. The work is done with diligence, the outcome is released. In this way, freedom is found not in controlling the world, but in controlling the self. Releasing attachment to outcomes cultivates resilience. When failure comes, and it inevitably will, the mind remains stable. Setbacks are no longer disasters, but lessons. Mistakes become guidance, and challenges become opportunities for growth. Emotional turbulence diminishes because the mind is no longer dependent on external validation or results. Peace arises from effort, not from the reward. This does not mean apathy toward results. Rather, it is clarity in focus, discipline in action, and serenity in response. This habit also strengthens decision-making. When one is not obsessed with a specific outcome, choices can be made with reason rather than fear or desire. Impulse, impatience, and desperation fade. The individual is able to weigh facts, consider principles, and act with purpose. Actions become more precise, effective, and aligned with values. By prioritizing effort over expectation, the uncontrollable person becomes adaptive. They adjust to changing circumstances without losing composure, finding solutions rather than succumbing to frustration. Attachment to outcomes also binds people to others' control. Praise, recognition, and success often require external conditions to be met, making the individual dependent on forces outside themselves. The person who lets go of such attachments becomes self-reliant. Success or failure no longer dictates worth or emotion. Influence from others diminishes because no reward or fear can be used to manipulate. Freedom grows from this internal stability. The mind becomes unshakable, focused, and sovereign. The practice of releasing attachment is developed through awareness and repeated effort. Each time a result is anticipated or clung to, the individual observes and questions, "Is this within my control? Can I guarantee this outcome?" By redirecting energy toward what can be controlled: preparation, effort, and integrity, the mind gradually weakens its dependence on uncertain results. Over time, the habit becomes natural, and serenity becomes a default state. The uncontrollable person acts with purpose and diligence, while remaining unattached to consequence, creating a life that is both productive and peaceful. Ultimately, letting go of attachment to outcomes is not resignation. It is mastery. It is the understanding that the world will unfold as it must, but the self can remain disciplined, focused, and unwavering. By prioritizing effort over result, action over expectation, and principle over desire, the individual achieves a freedom that cannot be taken. This is the essence of Stoic strength, the ability to act fully, live fully, and remain unshakable, regardless of what the world delivers. A mind unattached to outcomes is a mind that cannot be controlled. A person who cannot be controlled possesses a profound understanding of who they are. This self-knowledge is not superficial or fleeting. It is rooted in principles, values, and an unwavering sense of purpose. Most people drift through life, allowing opinions, trends, and circumstances to shape their identity. They bend, conform, and compromise to fit expectations, often losing sight of themselves in the process. In such a state, control is easy to exert from the outside. When a person's sense of self is unstable or dependent on others, influence, manipulation, and pressure become effective tools to steer behavior. The person who cannot be controlled, however, has cultivated a clear and firm sense of identity, making them impervious to such external forces. Knowing oneself begins with reflection. It involves understanding strengths and weaknesses, desires and fears, values and priorities. The uncontrollable person does not shy away from examining the mind, acknowledging limitations, and confronting uncomfortable truths. They seek clarity on what matters most and what defines their character. This self-awareness creates boundaries that are unyielding. When principles are clear, decisions become easier, actions become intentional, and external attempts at influence fail to penetrate. Identity becomes a shield, an anchor, and a compass all at once. This habit also fosters consistency. People without a clear sense of self often act erratically, swayed by fleeting moods, peer pressure, or social expectation. They may pursue trends or opinions without question, adapting their behavior to fit the environment. In contrast, the person who knows themselves acts with alignment to inner principles. Choices are deliberate. Behavior is predictable in virtue but not in susceptibility, and integrity guides every interaction. This consistency breeds confidence, both internally and externally. Others may respect or misunderstand it, but attempts to control it are futile because it is rooted internally, not externally. A clear identity also strengthens resilience. Life inevitably presents challenges, setbacks, and pressures to conform. The person with a firm sense of self does not bend under these forces because their core is anchored in internal truth. When criticism, rejection, or social pressure arises, it cannot destabilize them. Instead of reacting defensively or seeking approval, they evaluate the situation according to principles and act accordingly. The ability to remain grounded amidst chaos is a hallmark of the uncontrollable, and it stems from knowing who one truly is. Self-knowledge enhances purpose. When the mind is clear about values and priorities, energy is no longer wasted on distractions or futile pursuits. Goals are aligned with principles rather than fleeting desires. Decisions are made with awareness of long-term impact rather than short-term gratification. This alignment of purpose and identity creates a life of direction, meaning, and unshakable resolve. Manipulation becomes ineffective because actions are deliberate, intentional, and independent of others' expectations. Moreover, knowing oneself builds emotional independence. When identity is rooted in internal understanding, external circumstances cannot dictate mood or confidence. Praise does not inflate the ego. Criticism does not diminish it. Happiness and self-respect come from living in accordance with values, not from approval, status, or recognition. The uncontrollable person cultivates a mind that is calm, steady, and self-reliant, a mind that others cannot bend or sway through influence or coercion. Ultimately, understanding and living according to one's true self is the foundation of freedom. Control from the outside becomes impossible when the inside is anchored. By knowing who they are, adhering to principles, and acting with integrity, a person becomes a sovereign individual in a world full of pressures, expectations, and attempts at manipulation. Self-knowledge is not merely awareness, it is power, resilience, and liberation. Those who cultivate it live unshakable, purposeful lives. They are guided by reason, anchored in values, and untouchable by the forces of external control. In essence, knowing oneself is the ultimate habit of those who cannot be controlled.